Welcome to Appalachian Screams, where real nightmares breathe through static and shadow. Tonight, you'll hear 10 true Halloween horror stories, each one pulled from places that shouldn't exist. Some began with a phone call, some with a light in the fog, but none ever truly ended. If a voice whispers your name, don't answer. If a door stands open when it shouldn't, don't look inside. You've been warned. Before we start, comment where you're watching from. And if these stories crawl under your skin, like, share, and subscribe for more true horrors that never stop calling. You probably won't believe this, but I swear it happened. I've been a trucker for 16 years, and I've seen enough weirdness on the road to stop flinching at shadows. But what happened last Halloween, somewhere between Bloomington and the edge of nowhere, still wakes me up, drenched in sweat. It started like any other late-night haul. I was hauling an empty reefer back from Cincinnati, aiming to hit Peoria before sunrise. The radio was dead quiet, and the sky had that strange, bruised look the Midwest gets right before a cold front moves in. The route I usually take, Route 36, was blocked by a wreck. So the GPS offered me an alternate, a rural stretch labeled County Road 19A. Never heard of it, but it looked direct. About 10 miles in, I realized something was wrong. The pavement narrowed into faded asphalt. No streetlights, no reflectors, just cornfields on both sides that went on forever. I started counting the mile markers to keep myself alert, but they jumped numbers 23, then 27, then 25 again. I thought I was just tired. Then I saw the kid. He was standing right at the edge of the shoulder, head down, wearing one of those old plastic Halloween masks, white with a cartoonish grin. He didn't move as I passed, didn't even flinch when my high beams hit him. I slowed, craning my neck in the mirrors. He was still there, facing my trailer. When I checked again, he was gone. You don't stop for strangers on Halloween night. Not out there. I told myself it was just some local prank, maybe a scarecrow. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen him before. The road started twisting tighter. My GPS screen flickered, showing static for a second. Then, a map I didn't recognize. No towns, just thin gray lines and a blinking red arrow. The system said, next turn, 13 miles county route. Zero. That's not a thing. I laughed nervously and switched the radio on for company. It was white noise at first, then a voice garbled but calm reading names. It took me a moment to realize they were highway fatality names. I'd heard that broadcast before. Department of Transportation runs it sometimes, but this one was wrong. One of the names was mine. I turned the radio off, hard. A few minutes later, the temperature dropped so suddenly the windshield fogged up. I flicked the defroster. Nothing. The air felt thick, like breathing through a wet towel. Then the smell hit sweet, rotting corn mixed with burnt rubber. I rolled down the window, and that's when I saw headlights ahead of the truck, identical to mine, crawling toward me. Only the cab was dark. No driver. I flashed my brights. The other rig didn't react. It glided right past me on the shoulder, silent. I glanced at his trailer as it passed and nearly drove off the road because stamped across the side was my own company logo, and underneath, faintly visible in the grime, were letters spelling in memory of. I stopped the truck. Had to. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the wheel. The engine idled like it was struggling for air. The GPS said I was still on County 19A, but the mileage counter had frozen. I got out with my flashlight. There were no tire tracks on the pavement, no wind, no sound except the slow, uneven ticking of my cooling engine. I turned toward the field. The stalks were swaying like something big was moving through them, something keeping perfect pace with my breathing. Then I saw the mask again, half buried between the rows. Same grinning face, only this time it was fresh mud smeared across the inside, like someone had worn it from the wrong side. That's when I realized There weren't just 2 headlights earlier. There had been 4. When I climbed back into the cab and checked my mirrors, the kid in the mask was sitting in my passenger seat, smiling at me through the glass. I froze. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. The kid's mask gleamed in the dash light, cheap plastic warped from heat, the kind you find at dollar stores around October. But there was something wrong about the way it sat on his face. Too tight, like skin stretched under it. I blinked, and he was gone. Just the empty passenger seat. My heart was hammering so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I reached for my phone, thumbed the screen. It read, "No service." The GPS blinked, recalculating over and over until the display turned black. I started the truck rolling again. The asphalt ahead shimmered like water. The cornfields were gone, replaced by thick woods crowding right up to the ditch. The air felt heavier, like the cab was filling with static. I told myself I was dreaming, that fatigue was catching up to me. I turned on the CB radio. Breaker 19. Any drivers reading me? Nothing. Just that hissing, whispering noise, like breathing caught between channels. Then a voice answered. My voice. "Keep driving, Tom." I almost ran off the road. My own voice.com. But wrong. Slower. Drawn out like a recording played back at half speed. I shut off the CB and hit the brakes. But the truck didn't stop its load, but not because of the brakes. It felt like something was pushing back, holding the rig steady, even though my foot was pressed to the floor. The RPMs dropped to 0, yet the truck rolled smooth as ice. The road ahead was changing. The lines were gone, asphalt blending into cracked gray concrete. A faded sign appeared on the right shoulder. Mile 0, dead Route 19. I swear I hadn't taken any wrong turns, but everything about that place screamed wrong. Even the trees leaned away from the road. I tried to call dispatch on the emergency line. The call went through at least. I heard a click, but the voice on the other end wasn't my dispatcher. It was a woman whispering so softly I had to hold the phone against my ear. She said, "You've already been through here." The call cut out. I wanted to turn around, but when I checked my mirrors, there was nothing behind me. No lights, no horizon, just black, like the world had ended a few feet past my trailer. A shape appeared ahead, small, crouched on the center line. Looked like a deer at first, but when my headlights caught it, it moved wrong. Jerked upright like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. It was the kid again, but the mask was gone. His face was pale gray, eyes wide and wet, mouth stretched open too far. He pointed at me, then at the road, then pressed both hands flat against his chest. I slammed the horn. The sound didn't come out right. It was muffled, distorted, like it was echoing from underwater. Then the truck lights flickered and went out. Total darkness. When they came back on, he was gone again. But there was blood small prints smeared on the inside of the A windshield. Child-sized. That's when I noticed the clock. The dash clock had frozen at 11:59. Halloween night. No matter how long I drove, it stayed that way. The smell came back stronger, rotting sweet corn, diesel, and something faintly metallic. My throat burned. My eyes watered. I had to stop again. I pulled to the shoulder and jumped out, gagging. My boots hit dirt, not asphalt. Dirt packed down like something had driven over it again and again. When I looked back, there were 2 sets of tracks in the mud. Mine, and another, heavier set, perfectly matching my tire width, leading the same direction. That's when the air filled with a low humming, like a generator starting up. It wasn't mechanical though. It was vocal. A deep, layered sound of hundreds of voices humming the same note. It vibrated in my chest from the darkness down the road. Another truck appeared. Same cab, same trailer, same plate. But this time, I could see myself behind the wheel, grinning like a corpse, when my double's headlights hit me full in the face. I saw the passenger beside him wearing the mask again, but now it was smiling with my mouth I didn't run. I couldn't. My legs felt rooted in the dirt as the other rig rolled toward my rig. Perfect, down to the cracked fender and dead left headlight. The cab lights glowed faint orange like embers, showing my face behind the wheel. My face was smiling too wide, eyes black pits reflecting the dash glow. The engine roared, but it wasn't diesel. It was wet, like air bubbling through mud. I stumbled back into the ditch as the duplicate truck stopped inches from where I'd stood. The cab door opened. I expected to see myself step out. Instead, the kid climbed down first slowly, like gravity was fighting him. His mask was gone now, dangling from one hand. His face looked burned, melted smooth except for a slit where a mouth should have been. He pointed the mask at me, like offering it behind him. My doppelganger leaned out of the cab. Same jacket, same hat, same scar above the brow. Only the skin looked wrong, too pale, too stretched, like it had been pulled over something that wasn't quite human. He said, "You missed your turn, Tom." The voice was wet and heavy, like words forming in a throat full of water. I wanted to back away, but the dirt under my boots shifted. The ground wasn't ground anymore. It was soft, pulsing like a heartbeat. The smell of diesel and decay was everywhere, filling my lungs until I gagged. Then everything went still. No wind, no hum, no sound. Just silence so thick it pressed on my eardrums. The boy crouched, stood the mask on the ground, and started scraping lines into the dirt with his fingers. I realized after a second what he was drawing: tire treads. 2 long grooves, side by side, leading straight toward the woods. The other me got out of the truck and walked toward me. His eyes glistened like oil. When he spoke again, it wasn't words, it was radio static, shaped into language. "Keep driving. Or stay here. Doesn't matter." I turned and ran for the cab, but the real one wasn't there anymore. Just the duplicate. The keys hung in the ignition. Same keychain, same cracked leather. Against every instinct, I climbed inside. The smell was stronger, now burnt rubber, old blood, and something metallic sweet. I started the engine. It turned over easily to easily, humming smooth as silk. The dash clock still read 11:59. I slammed the shifter into drive and floored it. The world outside blurred. The trees bent backward as if retreating. The road stretched endlessly forward, gray and wet and pulsing like a living thing. I drove for what felt like hours, but the clock didn't change. The same mile markers passed again and again: 23, 27, 25. The same flickering sign: mile 0, dead Route 19. Eventually, I saw lights ahead, warm, yellow, human. A diner. I pulled in, shaking, nearly collapsing out of the cab. A waitress inside looked up like she'd seen a ghost. "Jesus, mister," she said. "You all right? You're white as a sheet." I nodded, trying to breathe. "Yeah, just bad road." She frowned. "Where'd you come from?" "County 19A. Her face went blank. "Honey, that road's been closed since '82. Bridge washed out. Nobody drives it." I laughed, a weak, broken sound. "Guess I didn't get the memo." She gave me a mug of coffee, hands trembling. "We've had drivers come in saying that before. They all talk about a boy in a mask." My heart stopped. "You've heard that story?" She nodded, slowly. "He died there. Halloween night. Truck hit him head on. Driver swore he saw himself behind the wheel. Outside, my truck idled. The headlights flickered once, then steadied. I walked to the window, heart pounding. The passenger seat was empty. But for a second, just one heartbeat, I saw my reflection in the glass. Only it wasn't me. It was smiling. I looked away. When I turned back, the truck was gone. Not driven off, gone. The lot was empty. I quit trucking 2 weeks later. I haven't been on the road since. But sometimes, when I'm driving anywhere at night, My radio crackles, and that same calm voice says my name. It always ends the same way. Keep driving, Tom. Last night, my wife said she saw headlights parked outside the house at 11:59 and a kid in a white mask sitting behind the wheel. When I was a kid, we weren't supposed to go past the cul-de-sac on Westfield Lane. Every town's got one of those stories, right? The house everyone whispers about, the one where parents say stay away without explaining why. Ours was number 72, the Candy House. It looked normal enough, 2 stories, blue shutters, porch light always on. But on Halloween night, something about it felt wrong. The air turned still. The streetlights flickered, and though nobody ever saw who lived there, a bowl of candy always appeared on the front steps. The wrappers inside were old-fashioned, taffy, wax lips, candy cigarettes, the kind your grandparents talk about. Kids dared each other to take one, but nobody ever admitted doing it twice. I left town after high school, moved to Dayton, tried to forget the whole thing. But last Halloween, I came back to visit my folks. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Same cracked sidewalks, same faded lawns. But number 72 looked different, cleaner, like someone had just repainted it. Yesterday, the porch light was still burning. I told myself it was nostalgia messing with me. As night fell, the old curiosity crept in. I'd never been brave enough to go up those steps as a kid. Now I was 32, and it felt ridiculous to still be afraid of a house. Around 10:30. After most trick-or-treaters were gone, I walked down the cul-de-sac. The air smelled like wet leaves and smoke from someone's fire pit. Crickets were quiet. I noticed every other porch light was off, except that one. The bowl was there. Same glass bowl I remembered, filled with those waxy, dusty candies. A little sign taped to the front said, "Take one." The glass looked clean. To clean. I leaned closer and realized it wasn't glass at all. It was thick plastic, sealed shut. The candies weren't wrapped anymore. They were just sitting in there, perfectly preserved, like time hadn't touched them. I don't know why I touched the doorknob. Habit, maybe, or some stupid sense of defiance. The handle was warm, and the door opened on its own. The air that came out was stale, like a basement that's been sealed for decades. I called out, "Hello." No answer. But from deeper inside, faint music started playing. Tinny, warped carnival music. Something about it froze me in place. I knew that melody. Every kid in town did. It used to come from the ice cream truck that drove through Westfield summers before I was born, the one that disappeared after running a stop sign and killing a little girl in the intersection. I stepped inside. Hallway wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing older layers beneath green, floral, then yellow, checkered, then black. The air felt damp, and every step made the wood groan like it was exhaling. The smell was the worst part. Sweet, but rotten sweet, like fruit that had gone bad under heat in the living room. The TV was on static, hissing, light flickering across a candy dish sitting on a table. Same dish, same sign. Take one. I should have left. I know that. But I picked one up. It wasn't wax or sugarette. It was cold, hard, heavy. When I turned it over in my hand, I realized what it was. A tooth human. Small dot. The static on the TV changed. Shapes started moving. Kids in costumes walking up a porch. My porch? My reflection flashed in the glass for a split second. Only my eyes were gone. I dropped the tooth and bolted out the front door. The porch light buzzed like a hornet's nest. When I looked back down the street, every porch light in the cul-de-sac was off. Every single one. Except number 72. As I ran home, I passed my parents' house, saw a candy bowl on our porch with the same sign taped to it. Take one. When I woke up the next morning, the bowl was gone. I told myself I'd imagined it it that my mind was still stuck in childhood ghost stories. But when I went outside, there was a ring of sticky residue on the porch rail, shaped exactly like a bowl had been sitting there all night. Mom laughed it off when I mentioned it. That old house again. Lord, you were obsessed with that place. It's condemned now. Condemned. That word stuck with me. After breakfast, I walked back to the cul-de-sac. The house was still there, bright and crisp, like it had been power washed, while the rest of the street rotted. No caution tape, no boards, just the faint smell of caramel and dust. The porch light was off now, but the bowl was still there, refilled, and there were footprints, small ones. Children's shoes, leading up to the steps, but not away. I snapped a photo with my phone. When I looked at the picture, the footprints weren't there. Neither was the house. Just empty road and a blur of light where it should have been. That's when I noticed someone across the street, an old man watering his lawn in his pajamas. I remembered him vaguely from childhood. Mr. Halloran. He waved me over. Looking at the candy house again, huh? Yeah, I said, half embarrassed. Thought it was condemned. He lowered his watering can. Should have been. Wasn't nobody living there since the fire? Fire? He nodded slowly. Halloween night, 89. Some teens went in for a dare. Only one made it out. Kid kept mumbling about a woman giving them candy that tasted like pennies. Police found nothing but teeth, and that damn bowl still sitting on the table. The way he said it made my skin crawl. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The candy, the bowl on our porch, the tooth in my hand. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that warped carnival tune again at 11:30. I gave up pretending to sleep. I grabbed a flashlight and drove back to Westfield Lane. I parked a block away this time. The neighborhood was dead quiet. No lights, no wind. The air had that syrupy smell again, sickly sweet and clinging to my throat. The house waited. Porch light glowing faintly. Bowl gleaming. I didn't mean to go in again. I really didn't, but something about it felt like gravity pulling me. The door opened without a sound, like it had been waiting for me inside. The air shimmered. The wallpaper had changed. It was bright, new, full of color. Kids' drawings on the fridge. A candy jar on the counter. For a second, it looked alive again, like I'd stepped into a memory. Then I saw them. 4 kids sitting cross-legged on the living room floor. Faces pale as wax, eyes fixed on the TV. They were watching home videos, Halloween trick-or-treating. Laughter, porch lights. I recognized the neighborhood, the same street. One of the kids in the footage turned toward the camera. It was me. My flashlight flickered. The kids on the floor turned in unison. Their mouths opened, and I saw what was inside. Hard white rose, smooth and glinting. All teeth. Want some candy? One of them asked in a voice that wasn't theirs. The bowl appeared again on the table. Same sign. Take one. I ran. But the door didn't lead outside. This time it opened into another hallway. Wallpaper peeling, air thick with sugar and rot. Every door I passed led to the same living room again and again. Same kids, same bowl. When I finally found the front door again, it was locked from the inside. The light behind me grew brighter. The smell burned my nose. Something was breathing in the walls. Then I heard the doorbell ring from outside. Through the window, I saw a child in costume, little girl, princess dress, holding out her bag. I screamed at her to leave. She looked right at me and smiled. It's okay, she said. I took one last year. When she turned away, I saw her back. Her skin was covered in tiny, perfect teeth, glinting in the porch light like scales. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every sound outside made me flinch. The hum of the refrigerator. A dog barking 2 blocks away. The faint rhythm of candy wrappers rustling in my head. I sat by the window, waiting for sunrise, but the street outside never brightened. The streetlights just stayed on, humming like old fluorescent bulbs. Around 5 a.m., I noticed something strange. The cul-de-sac wasn't empty anymore. Dozens of candy bowls lined the curbs, different shapes, different colors, all glowing faintly from inside. One for every house. I stepped outside, barefoot, air thick, with that familiar burnt sugar smell. When I got closer, I saw that each bowl was filled with teeth. Hundreds of them, arranged neatly in spirals. Some were baby teeth, others weren't. The closer I got to number 72, the fresher they looked, wet, pink at the roots. The house loomed ahead, perfectly lit, perfectly wrong. The porch light flickered 3 times like a heartbeat. The door was open again, swinging slowly, wood creaking as if whispering. I told myself I'd end it, burn the place down, tear it apart, whatever it took. That's what I said out loud, anyway. But inside, I think I just wanted to see her. The woman Mr. Halloran mentioned, the one who gave the candy that tasted like pennies. I crossed the porch. The bowl waited for me, empty this time. The sign still said, "Take one." I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air shifted. The house was alive, now walls pulsing faintly with veins of red light, wallpaper breathing. Candy hung from the ceiling like cocoons. I heard whispering from every direction, like dozens of mouths speaking at once. They were saying my name. The living room was gone. In its place stood a long, narrow corridor lined with mirrors. Each one reflected me at a different age, child, teenager, adult, but all of them were smiling. Each reflection held a piece of candy between their teeth. At the end of the hall stood a woman in a long red dress, back turned. Her hair was dark and matted, dripping something thick that hit the floor with soft, wet sounds. "You came back," she said softly. Her voice carried that same warped, carnival melody. I couldn't move. She turned. Her face wasn't flesh, it was made of sugar, sculpted into the vague shape of a smile. Where eyes should have been were 2 small pieces of candy corn, glowing faintly. She reached out a hand, and it stuck to the ear like melted caramel. "Everyone takes one," she whispered. "But you took 2. She held out the bowl again. This time, it wasn't filled with candy. It was filled with small, white, familiar shapes, my teeth. I touched my mouth without thinking. My fingers came away sticky. A molar slipped loose and clattered to the floor. Then another. I screamed. The walls echoed it back in dozens of voices. My own reflection in the mirrors started losing its teeth too, blood running down its chin, smiling wider every second. I tried to run, but my feet stuck fast to the floor, sunk into something warm and soft. The boards pulsed beneath me, drawing me down inch by inch. The woman leaned close, sugar face cracking. "Now you'll stay sweet forever," she whispered. The last thing I remember was the smell burnt caramel, blood, and something chemical, like formaldehyde. When I opened my eyes, I was outside again. Morning light. Quiet. The house stood dark. Door shut, paint faded, and peeling like it had always been. My mouth throbbed. I ran my tongue across my teeth. There were none. Smooth gums, raw and bleeding. A police car rolled by later that day. The officer told me the house had collapsed overnight, like it had never been there. They said I was lucky to get out. But when I got home, there was a package waiting on my porch. No return address. Inside was a candy dish glass, old-fashioned. It was filled with tiny white teeth, and on top, a note in a child's handwriting. "Take one." I didn't take one. I took 2. Now, every time I smile, I can taste sugar. You learn to stop jumping at sounds when you work nights in a hospital. The hum of fluorescent lights, the click of old pipes, the buzz of those automatic doors that never really close all the way. They blend into one long drone that you stop hearing after a few weeks. But there are still things that get under your skin. For me, it was the morgue. I took the security job at St. Luther's Hospital because it was quiet. Small town, mostly elderly patients, Nothing dramatic. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6. Most nights, I just walked the halls, checked doors, and drank burnt coffee from the vending machine near radiology. But the morgue was part of my rounds, and I always saved it for last. The door was a heavy steel slab with a keypad lock, the kind of door that keeps you out, not in. When you opened it, the smell hit first chemical, metallic, cold. The light inside was motion activated, and it always flickered before it stayed on, casting the room in that harsh white that made everything look too sharp. It wasn't a big space, just 3 walls of refrigerated drawers, an autopsy table, a drain in the floor, and the faint whir of the cooling system. My job was to make sure the doors stayed locked, that the freezer units were running, and that the body's patients, the staff said, were logged out. The first odd thing happened on October 20th. Drawer 12 kept sliding open. It wasn't all the way, just an inch or two, enough to make the cold air hiss out when I walked in. I pushed it close, made a note on the clipboard, and moved on. I figured one of the pathologists hadn't latched it properly, but the next night Halloween happened again. This time was wider, maybe 6 inches. I shut it harder, heard the latch click. As I turned to leave, something metallic clinked inside, like a scalpel falling on steel. I froze, waited. Nothing. Probably a tray shifting, I muttered. My voice sounded too loud. Still, when I did my next round an hour later, the drawer was open again. This time, all the way. Inside was a sheet-covered body, tagged dangling from the toe. The tag read, John Doe, -10:20 nights, cardiac arrest. Nothing unusual, but the sheet was damp, and the smell wasn't chemical anymore. It was raw, like blood that hadn't dried right. I reached out to push the drawer closed. Again the body's hand twitched. I jumped back, slammed into the counter, heart pounding. I stared for a full minute. The hand was still now, fingers curled around the edge of the sheet like they'd just moved. I wanted to believe it was air pressure or the unit cycling, but the tag was swaying, slow and steady, like it had been bumped. I slammed the drawer shut, shoved the latch until it stuck. Then I killed the light and left fast. When I got back to the security office, the monitor that showed the basement feed was static. That never happened. I switched channels, parking lot, elevators, hallways, all fine. Only the morgue cam was dead. I called maintenance. They said the basement camera hadn't worked in years. That's when I realized something that didn't make sense. I'd seen it working before, every night. The feed showed that same flickering fluorescent light over the autopsy table. I'd even watched one of the orderlies wheel in a stretcher once. I looked again, static. Then, for half a second, the picture flickered back on. The drawer was open, the same one, and something was sitting up. I grabbed my flashlight and keycard, telling myself it was a trick of the feed, maybe a recording. But when I got to the basement door, it was already ajar. The keypad's red light blinked like it had just been used. I shined my light inside. The drawer was open. The sheet was gone, and wet footprints led from the autopsy table to the door. The last print stopped right at my boots. And there was condensation forming on the inside of the morgue door, like something was breathing against it from my side. I locked that morgue door and called upstairs, but nobody answered. Night shift at St. Luther's was a skeleton crew, 1 nurse at reception, 1 tech in ICU, and me. I told myself it was fine, no reason to panic. But the smell followed me up the stairwell suite, like copper and disinfectant. At the security desk, the basement camera feed blinked back to life. Grainy, black and white, but clear enough to see the open drawer again. Drawer 12. I leaned closer. The angle caught the reflection of something shiny near the tabola metal. The tag, swinging gently. The tag faced the camera for a second. I saw the name, Thomas J. Hale. That's me. I felt my stomach drop. I checked the roster clipboard hanging on the wall. Drawer 12, still listed John Doe minus 10/29. I flipped through the log sheets, no changes. No new intakes. It was impossible. The radio on my belt crackled. Security, basement, access. I froze. Nobody ever radioed from the basement. Copy, I said, trying to sound steady. Who is this? Static. Then a voice, faint but calm. Close the drawer, Tom. I dropped the radio. I should have left. Just walked out, called in sick, quit, anything. But I went back down. Habit, duty, whatever you want to call it, tit, pulled me there. The hallway lights flickered. The hum of the refrigeration units was louder now, like an engine struggling underwater. My shoes squeaked on the tile, and the sound echoed back at me, one step late. Like someone was following just behind. When I reached the morgue door, the keypad was unlocked again. My hand shook when I pushed it open. The room looked different, colder somehow. Frost rimed the steel drawers, and every label had fogged over, except one drawer 12. Glistening wet, tag swinging. I stepped closer. The sheet was back in place, tucked perfectly. Only the toe tag now read Thomas J. Hale, minus 10/31. That was tonight's date. I reached out to touch it, maybe to prove it was fake. The tag was ice cold, stuck to my fingers for half a second before I tore them free. My skin burned where it touched. The lights flickered again. This time, when they came back, the drawer beside it was open too. Then another. Then another. Metal groaned as the latches released one by one, until the whole wall of drawers yawned open like mouths. Sheets stirred in the cold air, moving though no vent was running. The sound came next soft, wet, dragging, like bare feet on linoleum. I backed toward the door, but it swung shut on its own, locking with a heavy click. My keycard flashed red dot. Something moved behind the autopsy table. Slow, deliberate. Who's there? My voice cracked. The figure stepped out, gray skin, bloated veins, sheet clinging to his shoulders like a cloak. It wasn't the John Doe anymore. The face was half rotted, but the eyes were mine. I stumbled backward, knocking over a tray. Instruments clattered, scalpels scattering across the floor. The thing tilted its head, smiling with what was left of my mouth. "You're early," it said, in my voice but wetter, gurgling. I bolted for the keypad, slamming the override code. Nothing. The power panel blinked between red and white, as though unsure if it was alive. Behind me, the drawers were slamming shut one after another, echoing like gunfire. Only drawer 12 stayed open. The lights went out. I could still see the faint outline of the tag swinging in the dark, glowing faintly blue from the emergency light above. I pressed my back to the door, whispering to myself that it was just exhaustion, just low blood sugar, just anything but what it looked like. But the air was wrong to wet, to heavy, and every breath came out in clouds. Then I heard the sound that broke me. A faint hiss, the sound of a body bag unzipping. When I turned my flashlight on, it wasn't aimed at the table anymore. It was aimed right at my reflection in the freezer glass, only the reflection smiled. And its chest wasn't rising anymore. The last thing I saw before the light died was my own toe tag sliding shut inside drawer 12. When I came to, the light was red, not flashing like an alarm, steady, low, like it was coming from behind my eyelids. I was lying on the morgue floor, cheek pressed against the cold tile. My radio was dead, and my flashlight was still on, pointing at the ceiling. I don't remember blacking out. I just remembered the sound of that zipper, and then nothing. I tried to stand, but my legs were weak. The morgue door was open a few inches, fog spilling out into the hallway. Every drawer was closed again. The air was still, too still. I called up to the front desk. No response. I switched to the maintenance channel. Nothing. Then the static shifted into something rhythmic, a slow, dragging breath. I turned the volume down, but the breathing kept going, soft and close. I stepped into the hall, shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The condensation was thicker now, like the whole basement was exhaling. The emergency exit sign above the stairwell flickered between red and black. Red and black, like a pulse. Halfway up the stairs, the hospital lights died. Everything went black. Only one light stayed on the flickering fluorescent from the morgue. It wasn't supposed to have backup power, but it was glowing now, harsh and cold, casting long shadows that moved, even though nothing else did. Then the intercom crackled. Security to basement, drawer 12. The voice was mine. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to run out the front door, but my feet turned back down the stairs. Each step creaked like I was walking through water. The morgue door was wide open again. Inside, the temperature had dropped below freezing. My breath fogged instantly. The walls glittered with frost. A single drawer was open 12, of course, and from inside came that wet sound again. Slow, deliberate. Stop, I whispered. My voice sounded like it was swallowed by the air. The sheet rose, then fell. A breath. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a metal stool, and slammed it into the drawer. The body didn't move. I slammed again, screaming now until the stool bent in half. The sheet slid back just enough to reveal a gray hand gripping the edge of the drawer. Nails black and broken dot. Then the hand fell limp. I backed away, panting. The light above me hummed louder, flickered, then popped. Darkness. When it came back, the drawer was empty. The cold air hissed louder, pushing against my chest like pressure underwater. The drain in the floor began to bubble, dark liquid seeping out instead of down. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled toward the door, but my keycard wouldn't read. The keypad blinked red, over and over. I hit it, screamed at it, begged it to open. That's when I saw the reflection in the steel behind me. The body was standing. It wasn't moving fast, just one step at a time, dragging something heavy behind it. A sound like chains scraping tile. I turned, ready to swing again, but it wasn't the John Doe anymore. It was me. My own uniform, my own ID badge, my own open throat leaking down the front of the shirt. It looked at me with dead eyes and said, perfectly calm, finish your shift. The world tilted. I felt my knees give out. The last thing I saw before hitting the floor was the other me opening drawer 12 again and sliding something inside. The tag caught the like Thomas J. Hale, minus 10/31. Then, like, I don't remember leaving the hospital, but I must have, because I woke up in my car in the parking lot, headlights still on, dawn just breaking. My uniform was soaked, freezing cold. I went back inside, but the basement door was chained shut. The chief told me no one had been down there in years. When I checked the security logs later that day, there was one final entry under my name. Time stop, 3:13 a.m. Camera, 12. Morgue. Drawer secured. Shift complete. They said I must have logged it by mistake. But here's the thing, since that night, I keep waking up with frost on my breath and a faint smell of formaldehyde on my hands. And last week, my new badge came in the mail. I didn't order it. It had my photo, my name, and one small difference under title. It didn't say security officer. It said property of St. Luther's Morgue, every night at 3:13 a.m. My phone vibrates once and the screen flashes a message I can't delete. Drawer secured. People assume the scariest part of working in live TV is what happens on air. It's not. It's what happens when there's nothing on, when the cameras are off, the signal's black, and the whole station hums like it's thinking. That's the noise that gets to you, the dead air. I worked the night shift at KRLV, a local station out of Springfield. My job was simple. Monitor the feed, make sure the late night reruns aired clean, and keep the transmitter online. One person, one building, one graveyard shift. Halloween night fell on my rotation last year, and I was alone in master control cement walls, buzzing lights, and the constant hiss of static that never quite went away. The broadcast tower sat 3 miles out past the main road, but the signal room here in the basement kept a direct live feed. I liked the quiet, usually. That night felt different. Around 1 a.m., channel 19 hour emergency test frequency lit up on my monitor. It shouldn't have. That channel was dead, archived, and disconnected since the analog days. But there it was, a faint gray image bleeding through rolling lines, old VHS static, faint movement, like smoke. At first, I thought someone was pranking me. Maybe engineering was testing a frequency swap. I radioed upstairs. No answer. The phone lines were down to just a busy signal that hissed like breath. The image sharpened. I saw a hallway narrow, white, fluorescent lights flickering. Looked like the back corridors of our own building. The camera was handheld, moving slowly, jerky. Someone was walking down the hall, breathing hard, their shadow stretching ahead of them. I checked the live security feeds. Nothing. Empty halls, empty offices. But the channel 19 camera kept moving, turning corners that matched our floor plan exactly. Then I heard it dot faint beneath the static. Can anyone hear me? The voice was male, young, desperate. I leaned close, trying to trace the source. The words came again, but this time I realized they weren't coming from the monitors. They were coming from the hallway behind me. I spun around. Nothing. When I turned back, the screen was clearer. The man on the feed was running now, down that same corridor, flashlight beam cutting through darkness. He reached a locked door, rattled it, turned toward the camera. His face filled the screen. It was me. Same uniform, same ID badge, even the same pen clipped to my pocket. But my face looked pale, eyes sunken, like I hadn't slept in weeks. He stared straight into the lens. If anyone's watching, he said, don't touch the transmitter. Don't let them switch the feed. Signal cut to static. I just sat there, frozen, heart hammering. Then my radio crackled back to life. A voice came through thin, hollow, like it was traveling through a tunnel. Control. This is Field Ops. You're feeding channel 19 again. Shut it down. That didn't make sense. I wasn't feeding anything. I checked the transmitter board output was stable. Everything normal, except one line, labeled Auxiliary Source 19, was blinking green. I hovered over the kill switch. Then the static on the screen parted. And for half a second, the hallway appeared again, but this time, the camera angle was reversed. It was looking at me, sitting in the control room, hand on the console, my breath caught. On screen, I watched myself stand up, turn toward the hallway door. But I was still sitting there, watching. The lights in the control room flickered once, then dimmed. The transmitter logs auto-updated, typing on their own. Signal redirected channel 19, active. Source, control room camera. I looked up. The red recording light above the main monitor was on, and I hadn't turned it on in the monitor's reflection. Behind my own frozen face, another figure stood at the door, watching me through the glass, holding a camera identical to mine. I didn't move for almost a full minute. The red light above the monitor stayed on, casting a faint glow across the control room. Whoever was outside the door didn't knock, didn't move. I could see their shape in the reflection tile still, the faint outline of a handheld camera pressed to their chest. Then the screen in front of me flickered again. Channel 19 was broadcasting live footage from inside the control room. The same angle I was looking at right now, only delayed by maybe 3 seconds. I waved my hand in front of my face. 3 seconds later, the version of me on the monitor did the same. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a recording. It was a live loop. I switched input sources, but the signal wouldn't cut. Every monitor on the wall blinked to the same feed. Me, room, delay dot, Then the intercom buzzed. A voice came through, faint but calm. "Don't turn it off." It was my own voice. I yanked the cable from the wall. The sound kept going. "This isn't broadcast," the voice said, slightly distorted. "It's transmission. Keep watching." Key, the air in the room changed heavier, like pressure before a storm. The fluorescent lights above me dimmed to half brightness. I felt my chest tighten as if the walls were closing in. I forced myself to focus on the monitors. The delayed me on screen leaned forward suddenly, eyes wide, like I'd heard something behind me, but I hadn't moved. Then a second version of me, Hind, the frame behind the first one. It looked identical, right down to the scar above the eyebrow. It smiled. Slowly, the lights in the control room went out. The monitors glowed brighter, the only light source left. Static bled into the edges of the screen, like ink spreading through water. I reached for the door, but the knob was freezing cold, covered in condensation. Behind me, the speakers crackled again, playing that faint analog hiss that used to mean the station was off air. SS, 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 then faint whispers. A woman's voice this time, not English. The words pulsed in rhythm with the static, like breathing. I recognized the pattern Morse code. I'd learned it years ago when I worked on the tower crew. 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots, .SOS. I grabbed my headset and patched into the tower feed, trying to reroute the signal. The transmitter wasn't responding. I tried the backup relay. Nothing. Then a text feed popped up on the diagnostic screen. Source locked. External signal override. Transmitting 3 o'clock, 3:13. The clock read 2:57. I glanced back at the monitor. My delayed reflection was still staring at the door, waiting at 2:59. The hallway camera came back online, uncommanded. It showed the same narrow corridor from before, lights flickering, walls stained with static. Something moved at the end of it. Too fast to see clearly. The transmission time hit 3 o'clock. The monitors all switched at once, no longer showing me, but the hallway, live. The camera panned slowly, jittering like a handheld feed. Then it stopped on the control room door. From my side, I heard the sound of a lens adjusting, the faint mechanical click of a UTOFOC US. I shut down the main breaker. The monitors flickered off and then back on, still powered, even with the breaker dead. The picture showed me standing in the dark, flashlight in hand, exactly as I was right now. I heard a faint creak behind the wall. Someone walking in the crawlspace between the rooms. The monitors zoomed in closer, tighter on my face. Static flared, and for a split second, the image changed. It wasn't me anymore. It was the hallway figure. My face stretched over its eyes' black sockets, mouth opening wider and wider until it filled the frame. Then, silence. I took one step toward the door. The handle turned by itself. It opened to darkness, no hall, no floor, just an endless gray, static fog that looked alive. I could feel cold air pulling at me, like gravity in reverse. I slammed the door and shoved a chair under the handle. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. At exactly 3:13, the transmission ended. All screens cut to black. The log printer beside me started typing on its own. Paper sliding out slow. One word repeated over and over. Retransmit, retransmit, RETRANSMIT. When I looked up, the red recording light above the door turned back and this time, it wasn't pointing at the monitors. It was pointed at me. I didn't know how long I sat there, staring at that red light. The printer had stopped, the static was gone, and the whole building felt hollow like the air had been drained out. My head buzzed, a low-frequency hum in my skull, almost like I was still hearing the transmission, even though the speakers were dead. At 3:30, I finally stood up. My chair legs screeched against the floor, echoing through the empty control room. The monitors were all black now, every one of them, except for a small line of text in the corner of the main display. Feed archived channel 19. I checked the system logs. It showed a successful broadcast lasting exactly 13 minutes. No video file attached. Just the source location. KRLV Tower. Uplink node 4. The tower was miles away. The only way to reset it manually was from the transmitter cabin at the base. I grabbed my keys and flashlight and headed out. The night outside felt heavier than it should. No wind, no crickets. Even the air smelled off ozone and something burnt, like dust on hot metal. The gravel crunched under my boots as I crossed the lot. My van headlights flickered once before stabilizing. The road to the tower was empty, narrow, lined with dead trees that looked more like antennae than wood. I drove with the radio off, but halfway there, the speakers clicked alive by themselves. A voice whispered through static mine again, repeating the same words. "Don't let them switch the feed." I yanked the power cord out. The whisper kept going, softer now, bleeding from the air vents instead of the speakers. By the time I reached the tower, the world felt wrong. The structure loomed above the fog, blinking its red light into the mist. The small transmitter cabin at its base had a single door and one dusty window. The interior light was on. I got out slowly. A flashlight beam caught the door frame, fresh scratches in the paint, like something had clawed it open. The door wasn't locked. It swung inward with a long, metallic groan. Inside was the usual equipment: transmitter racks, power converters, and a wall of analog switches long since retired. But every monitor was active, flickering with static. Hand on the main feed monitor, channel 19 was still live. Only it wasn't showing me this time. It was showing the control room.mt. Then the camera panned, slowly, toward the hallway door. That was impossible. The building was 10 miles away, and I hadn't left anyone behind. I felt my throat tighten. The feed zoomed in on the door's window. Something was moving behind the glass. A figure pacing, its motions jerky, mechanical. It looked like someone rehearsing movement rather than doing it. Then it turned to face the camera. It was me again, but not quite. The eyes were too wide, the mouth slightly open, like it was waiting to speak. My reflection on the monitor tilted its head. Then, in perfect sync with my voice, said, "Feed archived. Transmission complete." Every monitor in the cabin flickered to life, showing the same image from different angles. Me, standing in the room, surrounded by dead equipment. A low buzzing filled the air, deep and resonant, vibrating in my chest. The red beacon light outside started flashing faster, like a heartbeat speeding up. The monitor closest to me flickered. The live timestamp appeared in the corner. Not 3:45, 3:13. The broadcast wasn't recorded. It was looping. The air grew colder. My breath fogged. From the corner of the cabin came a faint scratching metal on metal. I turned the light toward it. The steel access panel was moving. Bolts trembling, dust falling. Something inside the transmitter was pushing out. I backed toward the door as the bolts snapped one by one, and a burst of static poured from the monitors, loud enough to hurt. The panel fell open. Hand reached out, gray, shaking, holding a handheld camera. The lens turned toward me. The red light came on. "Don't let them switch the feed," my own voice said from behind the static. Then everything went white. They found the tower cabin empty the next morning. Equipment melted. All feeds offline. They said the last broadcast recorded on the system was a technician test pattern. No audio. Timestamped 3:13 a.m. But last week, on channel 19, accidentally flickered back to life. The engineers saw something in the static. A man in a control room, looking straight into the camera, and behind him another version of himself, holding a camera. They replayed the tape for me today to confirm the face. But I didn't have the heart to tell them what wasn't the broadcast that came from our station. It came from their screen. You probably won't believe me when I tell you this, but there's something wrong with the pumpkin field behind Lincoln Elementary. There always has been. We used to talk about it like a joke. Some creepy Halloween rumor about missing kids and haunted scarecrows. But it wasn't a story. Not really. It was a warning. I grew up in a small town in Illinois. It's the kind where the whole world feels like a 3-block radius of cracked pavement and familiar faces. The elementary school sat on the edge of town, and behind it stretched acres of farmland. Every fall, the owner-old man, Drury, would turn one section into a pumpkin patch for the school's festival. That was back in 2006, the year it happened. I was 12 then. Me, my best friend Zach, and his sister Emily thought it'd be funny to sneak into the patch on Halloween night. There was this old rumor: if you went out there after midnight and found the pumpkin with the face already carved, you could make a wish. But if you picked it up, something else would come looking for you. We laughed about it at first. Small town kids with too much imagination. But that night, the air felt heavier than usual, thick with smoke from distant bonfires. The sweet rotted pumpkins already collapsing into the dirt. The moon was full, pale enough to see without flashlights. We climbed the fence behind the playground and dropped into the field. The soil was soft, almost spongy, and the smell hit us immediately: wet earth and something sour underneath, like spoiled fruit. The pumpkins were huge, too big for one person to carry. Rows and rows of them stretching into the dark. Zach led the way, pretending to be brave. "First one to find the carved one wins," he said. Emily whispered, "What do we win?" "Not dying of boredom." We split up, moving between the rows. The wind blew hard enough to make the vines rustle. I kept thinking I heard footsteps that weren't mine. When I looked around, the stalks swayed like something had just ducked out of sight. Then Emily called out, "Hey, I found one." She was kneeling beside a massive pumpkin near the middle of the patch. The thing was perfectly round, smooth, and yes, already carved. Its grin was wide, uneven, the cuts jagged like torn skin. Inside, a candle flickered weakly, even though no one had lit it. We all stared at it, waiting for someone to laugh. "No one did," Zach said, "probably leftover from the school event." "There wasn't one this year," Emily replied. She was right. The festival had been canceled because of budget cuts. That's when I noticed something else. The pumpkin wasn't sitting on the ground. It was sunken into it, like the dirt was pulling it down. The vines around it weren't green anymore. They were black, shiny, like veins. Zach crouched closer. "I'm gonna take it." I told him not to. I don't know why. Something about the smell. The way the candlelight seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. It all felt wrong. But he reached out anyway. The moment his fingers touched the rind, tick, the candle went out. The wind stopped. Total silence. Then, from somewhere deeper in the field, we heard it, a dry, shuffling sound, like feet dragging through vines. "Todd," Emily whispered. "Who's there?" No answer. We backed up slowly. The vines beneath our feet seemed to move, coiling like snakes. I swear I felt one wrap around my ankle for a second before it slipped away. Zach said, "We should go." We turned to run, but the path between the rows had changed. The field didn't look the same. The fence was gone. The school was gone. Just endless pumpkins stretching under a too bright moon. Emily grabbed my arm. "Where's the way out?" We didn't know. Then, in the distance, another candle flickered to life. Then another. Dozens of them, hundreds, each inside a carved pumpkin, faces grinning wide, lighting up one road at a time until the entire field was glowing. All except one. The one Zach had touched. When I looked back, he was gone, but his flashlight lay beside the carved pumpkin, still on, pointing down into an open hole in the dirt. The beam from Zach's flashlight cut into the hole like a spotlight on a stage. The dirt around it was smooth, too perfect to be dug by hand. The smell rising out of it was sharp and chemical, like fertilizer, and something burned underneath. Emily called his name, but the field swallowed the sound. I took a step closer. The hole was deep at least 6 feet and I could see something down there, half buried. At first, I thought it was another pumpkin, smaller, paler. But then I realized it wasn't orange at all. It was gray, skin gray. I stumbled back, dragging Emily with me. "We're leaving," I hissed, but there was nowhere to go. The roads had shifted again. The vines crisscrossed like barbed wire. Every direction we turned, those carved faces stared back, hundreds of them, all grinning with the same jagged mouths. And they were getting closer. I don't mean physically moving. It was more like the space between us and them was shrinking. The moon above us pulsed brighter with every breath, casting long shadows that bent the wrong way. Emily clutched my arm. "Zach." Then, somewhere to our left, we heard him answer, "I'm here." His voice sounded normal, but distant, muffled, like he was speaking through water. We ran toward it anyway, tripping over vines that coiled around our shoes. The field opened into a small clearing. The earth churned and sunken like something had crawled through it. He stood there, back turned to us, holding his flashlight at his side. "Zach," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we have to go." He didn't move. Emily took a few steps closer. "Please, let's go home." That's when the flashlight in his hand flickered. The beam sputtered out, then came back, but the light wasn't white anymore. It was orange, like candlelight, and it was coming from inside him. His head turned slowly, too slowly, like his neck was made of vines instead of bone. When he faced us, I couldn't breathe. His eyes were hollow, carved into perfect triangles. His mouth cut into that same wide grin. A candle burned behind his teeth. Emily screamed. I grabbed her hand, pulled her back through the rows, the vines tearing at our legs. The air was hot now, reeking of decay. Behind us, I could hear the dry crackle of leaves as more footsteps joined his soft, dragging, inhuman. We didn't stop running until we saw the school's floodlight through the trees. Somehow, we found the fence again. I shoved Emily through and climbed after her. The moment we hit the pavement, everything went quiet. No wind, no smell, just silence. We didn't talk about it. We went home and swore never to mention it again. 2 weeks later, Zach's parents filed a missing person report. The police searched the field. They found nothing. No hole, no flashlight, no footprints. A year later, the school built a new parking lot where the field used to be. Every Halloween after that, kids said they saw lights under the asphalt, faint orange flickers that moved like candle flames. The janitor said sometimes he'd hear whispering through the vents at night, voices chanting in rhythm with the hum of the building. I thought it was over. I really did. Then last week, I went back. The school's been closed for years now, boarded up and overgrown. But when I walked around the back, the ground was soft again, like something underneath had been breathing. I found a pumpkin there, small, uncarved, but when I picked it up, it was warm, and on the underside, faintly scratched into the rind, were 3 words, "Help me out." I dropped it immediately. It split when it hit the ground, spilling not seeds, but dirt, dark, wet, and packed tight. Something pale was mixed in with it, something that looked like a tooth. That's when I heard it again. Zach's voice, closer this time. "I'm here." When I turned toward the sound, there were dozens of pumpkins behind me, every one carved with my face. Candles flickering inside like they were trying to breathe. I don't remember running. I just remembered the sound, those faint, wet crackles following me through the field, like vines dragging across skin. When I reached my car, my hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice before getting the engine to turn. The headlights cut across the field behind the school, and for a moment, I swore the pumpkins were breathing, swelling, and sinking in rhythm, as if the earth itself had a heartbeat. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the sheriff's office. I told them everything, Zach. The hole, the pumpkins, The faces. They looked at me like I'd brought them a campfire story. The deputy on duty laughed outright. "Son, that field's been paved over 15 years, he said. Ain't nothing there but concrete and weeds. He offered to drive out with me just to prove it. I said fine. We reached the lot just before dawn. The place was silent, except for the wind scraping dry grass against the chain-link fence. The asphalt stretched smooth and unbroken all the way to the edge of the woods. No pumpkins. No holes. I almost believed him. Almost. Then the deputy's radio crackled. A voice came through thin, fuzzy, like it was buried under static. "Unit 2, you there?" The deputy answered. "Copy." There was a pause. Then the voice said, "You shouldn't be here. The harvest starts at dawn." The deputy frowned and looked at me. "That you screwing around?" Before I could answer, the asphalt under his feet flexed. Just a ripple, small but real, like something shifting beneath the surface. He stepped back, hand on his gun. What the hell? The ripple came again, stronger this time. Cracks spread like veins through the pavement, and the smell rose with its sweet rot. The same one from that night in 2006. The deputy grabbed my arm. Back in the car. We ran, but before we reached it, the first chunk of asphalt broke open. A vine burst through, slick and black, thrashing like a whip. Another followed. Then another. Each one tipped with a pale hand, small, child-sized, gripping the air. The deputy drew his weapon and fired. The gunshots sounded muffled, swallowed by the field. The vines recoiled, but didn't stop. One wrapped around his ankle and yanked him backward. He screamed as it dragged him toward the opening. Boots scraping sparks off the pavement. I grabbed him, but he was stronger than me, whatever had him was. The vines pulled harder, and the ground caved beneath him. He disappeared, screaming all the way down. Then silence. The hole sealed itself shut. Smooth again, as if nothing had happened. I ran to my car and drove until the sky went gray. When I finally stopped, I was miles away, shaking so bad I couldn't hold the steering wheel. I told myself I'd never go back, but I did. It's Halloween again now, and I don't know why, but I can't stay away. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's because every time I close my eyes, I see Zach's flashlight beams still shining down into that hole. Or maybe it's because of what I found in my mailbox this morning, a small pumpkin, perfectly round, with my name carved into it. It was warm when I touched it, so I'm here again, behind the ruins of Lincoln Elementary. The weeds part easier than they should. The ground is soft again, pulsing faintly underfoot. I brought a flashlight and a shovel this time. The dirt gives way to easily, like it's helping me dig. The air smells like autumn used to before everything rotted. My flashlight catches something in the soil. His face. Carved. Not a pumpkin this time. Flesh. It's Zach. His eyes open when the light hits them. He smiles. That same jagged grin. "Told you I was here," he whispers. "Now you can stay too." I drop the flashlight. The ground moves beneath me, vines tightening around my legs. The light rolls, catching dozens of other faces buried in the soil malaise. The deputies, and too many others to count. All carved, all lit from within by the faint orange glow of candlelight. The air grows hot, sweet, heavy. The last thing I see before the dirt closes over me is the pumpkins around the field. Flaring to life, one by one, a ring of grins stretching across the horizon. They reopened Lincoln Elementary this year. Built new playgrounds, new classrooms, new fences. The kids love it. Every Halloween, the PTA plants a pumpkin patch for decoration. The teachers say the kids' names just seem to appear carved into the pumpkins overnight. They call it the harvest tradition. Next Halloween, they'll carve new names again, and mine will be waiting in the soil beneath theirs, grinning with the rest. I've stayed in more motels than I can count. When you're an HVAC tech who drives cross-state for emergency jobs, they all start to blur together. Same flickering neon sign, same thin curtains, same smell of bleach covering something older. But that Halloween night in Arizona, the motel off Route 61 wasn't just another stop. It was a dead place pretending to be alive. The repair call had come in late from a number I didn't recognize. The woman's voice was faint, like a bad radio signal. Units dead. Heat won't shut off. Please come soon. I was already halfway to Flagstaff, but a bonus job meant a paid night. So I agreed. She said the place was called Sunset Pines Motel. I looked it up, no listing. Just a few blurry photos from years ago and one old review that said, closed after the fire. I thought maybe she'd given me the wrong name. Wouldn't be the first time by the time I got there. It was nearly 11:30. The parking lot was empty except for a single old sedan, dusted with sand. The sign out front still flickered vacancy in red tubes, buzzing louder than the crickets. The office was dark, door propped open, bell hanging loose. Hello? I called, no answer, but the key rack behind the counter had one left. Room 8. The hallway lights hummed weakly. Every room door was shut except one near the end. Mine. The bracelet on the plaque hung crooked, and the carpet in front of it was damp. Like someone had just mopped inside. The air hit me like an oven. The heater roared, vents rattling. The wall unit thermostat was maxed out to 99. I shut it off. The fan stopped instantly. Too instantly. Usually, those old coils whined for a few seconds. The room was neat, but off everything too symmetrical. Too staged. The bedspread was perfectly flat. The remote lined up with the TV edge. The curtains drawn so tight it looked stapled. There was an old rotary phone on the nightstand, the kind no one uses anymore. It was off the hook. I hung it up. It rang immediately. The sound was sharp, cutting through the silence. I answered, half annoyed, half on autopilot. Sunset Pines Motel. A man's voice said, calm and slow. Your room is ready. Yeah, I'm already in it. Pause. Then, softly, not yet. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, trying to decide if someone was screwing with me. But when I looked at the wall, I noticed the wallpaper had bubbled in patches, as if the heat had warped it over time. Beneath one tier, I could see black scorch marks. I pulled back a section. The drywall behind it was burned straight through, charred and flaking. I shined my flashlight into the gap and saw something red underneath peeling paint on brick. But it wasn't brick. It was melted plastic. The smell hit next. Burnt hair. I stepped back, coughing. My flashlight beam shook across the room, landing on the bathroom door. It was open a crack. Something dripped from the sink slow, steady, like a faucet left half running. Only the sound was thicker. I pushed the door open. The air inside was freezing cold. Colder than it should have been without a sea. A single light flickered above the mirror. The sink was full of water, but it wasn't clear. It was cloudy, gray, with something floating just under the surface. I leaned closer. A room key, brass, number 8, behind me. The heater clicked back on, only this time it didn't sound like a fan. It sounded like breathing slow, steady, in sync with mine. I turned. The bedspread had shifted. A shape underneath it rose and fell, as if someone was lying there. I grabbed my tools and bolted for the door, but the handle was too hot to touch. I pulled my hand back. Blisters formed instantly. Then, through the wall, faint as static, I heard the woman's voice again. Please come soon. When I looked out the window for help, the parking lot was full of cars and every one of them was on fire, burning without smoke. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. The handle pulsed with heat, glowing faintly red through the brass. And the air in the room shimmered like asphalt in summer. The sound from the heater grew louder, less like breathing now, more like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. The phone rang again. I almost ignored it. Almost, When I picked up, the line hissed, then clicked. A woman's voice spoke softly. "You shouldn't have come back." My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" Silence. Then, faintly, "Room 8 never cools down." The line cut. I ripped the phone cord from the wall. It still rang. Something wasn't right with the light, either. It flickered in rhythm with that heavy, steady pulsing off, on. Off like the room was syncing itself to a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Grabbed my bag and used a wrench to break the latch on the window. The glass gave after 2 hits, but outside wasn't right anymore. The parking lot was empty again, the neon vacancy sign dark, just a stretch of blacktop disappearing into fog. That's when I heard a knock on the door. 3 slow knocks. Then another. I didn't answer. "Maintenance," a voice called from the hall. Deep, calm. I backed toward the bathroom, heart pounding. The voice came again, softer. "Sir, you called for service." I hadn't called anyone. The door creaked open a few inches, even though I hadn't touched it. The air beyond it glowed orange, like firelight from somewhere down the hall. I saw the man's hand, first gray sleeve, rough knuckles, skin slick with sweat. He stepped inside. The light from the hallway followed him like it was attached. His face was hard to focus. On his features kept shifting under the flicker. 1 second, he looked like a normal man. The next, his mouth was too wide, his eyes too bright. "Heat trouble?" he asked. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thermostats stuck." He smiled, showing teeth too small for his jaw. "They all are." He walked to the heater and crouched. I saw burn scars up both arms, twisted and raw. The air filled with the smell of melted plastic again. "Funny thing," he said, his tone almost casual. "You fix them, and they just start again. You turn off the heat, but the fire keeps burning." "I don't understand." He looked over his shoulder. "You don't have to. You're already checked in." Something in his voice froze me. I glanced at the key I'd found earlier, still in my pocket. Brass, room 8. When I looked back, the man was gone. The heater was quiet again. But the room was colder, now naturally cold. Frost had formed on the inside of the window I'd broken. I went to the desk to grab my phone. There was a leather binder sitting there that hadn't been before. The guest register, my name was on the first line. Under check-in date, October 31st. Under checkout date, blank. Below my name were others, dozens of them. Some dates went back to the 1960s. Every single one ended on October 31st. The last 5 names before mine were crossed out in red ink. Something dripped on the paper. I thought it was from my hand, but when I looked up, water or maybe condensation was dripping from the ceiling vent. I got my flashlight and aimed it upward. The vent cover was warped from heat. Inside, behind the slats, something glistened, dark, wet, and moving slowly, like something breathing against the metal. Then the heater kicked back on. The vent above me exhaled, hard, and a rush of burning air hit my face. For a second, I could swear I heard screams inside it, hundreds of them, layered and echoing through the ductwork. The door slammed shut behind me. The lock clicked. The red glow filled the room again, stronger this time, like the whole place was burning from within. I pressed my hand to the wall. It was hot. The wallpaper blistered beneath my fingers, bubbling until it peeled away. Behind it were names carved directly into the plaster. Mine was the newest. When I looked closer, I saw each name had a number scratched beside it, the same one on the room key's end. Mine was still glowing faintly, red like a fresh burn. I stopped touching the wall when I realized the heat wasn't coming from it. It was coming through it like there was something alive behind the plaster, breathing slow and deep. The names etched their pulse faintly, each letter rising with the rhythm of that unseen heartbeat. Mine glowed brightest. I needed out. I went for the door again, but the handle had cooled now, too cool. When I touched it, frost spread across the metal like spider veins. The temperature in the room dropped so fast that my breath came out in white plumes. The heater was still roaring. The sound had changed. It wasn't a hum anymore. It was voices, layered together, spring like air escaping from lungs. I pulled the breaker on the wall. The unit didn't stop. I tore open the vent, ready to disconnect it manually, but the inside wasn't mechanical anymore. The duct was gone, replaced by something organic, flesh-colored tubing lined with pulsing veins, warm and slick. I stumbled back, tripping over my toolbox. The vent exhaled again. A wave of burning air hit me so hot it blurred my vision. When I blinked, I wasn't in room 8 anymore. The wallpaper was different. The bedspread was blue instead of red. The phone on the nightstand wasn't rotary 8, was digital. But everything smelled the same. Burnt air, wet plaster, and something else, something human. A voice from the hall said, "Sir, maintenance." I turned. A man in a repair uniform stood in the doorway, holding a wrench. He looked about my age. His badge said J. Reynolds, HVAC. "Hey," I said, stepping forward. "Listen, you shouldn't be here." "The place is not," he frowned. "You, the one who called. Room 8's unit won't shut off." My stomach turned. "Wait, what's the date?" He blinked. "October 31st. I shook my head. "No, that's not possible." Stepped further inside. "You okay, man?" The heat surged again, a low thrum shaking the walls. The wallpaper bubbled behind him. He glanced back, confused. "What the hell?" "Don't touch the wall," I yelled. Too late. His hand pressed flat against a blistered surface. The sound that came out of him didn't sound human. His body arched, heat shimmering around him. The wallpaper beneath his palm blackened, and his skin began to smoke. He looked at me, eyes wide. "Help me," he croaked. I tried. God, I tried. But when I grabbed his wrist, his skin tore away like wet paper. The air filled with the stench of burning hair and copper. I stumbled back as he fell to his knees, the red glow spreading under his clothes like molten glass. His badge hit the floor. J. Reynolds, HVET. When I looked again, he was gone. Only a dark patch on the carpet remained, still warm under my boots. The door slammed shut. The phone rang. I didn't want to answer, but the sound wouldn't stop. I lifted the receiver. "Sunset Pines Motel," the voice said. "Your room is ready." It was my voice. I dropped the phone, and the room went black. The heater cut off. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Then, one by one, I heard the doors outside opening. Room 1, room 2, room 3, creaking slowly, moving closer. Footsteps filled the hallway, soft and dragging. Someone stopped outside my door. I held my breath. A shadow passed beneath the cracked bare feet, gray with ashdot, then a knock. 3 times. I didn't answer. The air in the room rippled again, and the red glow returned, this time from behind me. I turned. The mirror above the dresser was fogged, but there were 2 reflections, me and behind me. Someone lying on the bed under the sheet, rising and falling. I tore the sheet off. It was me, burned, charred, black. Eyes open, mouth moving, just enough to whisper, "Your next check-in." The lights died for good. I woke up this morning on the side of the highway, truck idling, sunrise in the mirror. Room 8's key sat on the passenger seat, cold as ice. I drove past where the motel should have been. Nothing. There's sand, desert, wind, and the faint smell of smoke. Still, sometimes when I stop for the night, I see the glow of a red vacancy sign flickering in the distance, and every time, the radio picks up a faint station I can't turn off. Channel 8, playing a single sentence. Over and over, "Your room is ready." I don't know what's worse, that I dreamed the whole thing, or that last night when I checked into a new motel, the key they handed me already said room 8. When you drive nights for a living, you get used to ghosts of the road headlights that vanish, passengers that stare too long, reflections that don't blink. But what happened on Route 302 last Halloween wasn't a trick of exhaustion. It was something older, something waiting. I'd picked up the shift because nobody else wanted it. Bus 302 ran from a small mountain town to the next city. 90 minutes of empty highway through nowhere. No stops past 10 p.m. It was supposed to be an easy route, just to me, the road, and maybe 1 or 2 night shift workers. The dispatcher, Ray, handed me the clipboard before I left the depot. "You're the only one running tonight," he said, rubbing his neck. "Don't stop for anyone, not on the manifest. Halloween brings out weirdos." "Got it," I said, though I wasn't really listening. I'd done this loop 100 times. The bus was half dead. Anyway, fluorescent lights flickering, heat barely working, one camera feed on the fritz. I pulled out around 10:45, tires hissing against cold asphalt. The town lights disappeared fast. Within 10 minutes, it was just darkness on both sides of the highway and the hum of the engine under my boots. Around the 15-minute mark, I saw her middle-aged woman, standing alone at a closed stop, suitcase at her feet. She wasn't on the manifest. I almost drove past, but she raised her hand, slow and deliberate, like she'd been waiting for me specifically. Something about it made me tap the brakes. The door hissed open. She stepped inside without a word. Her clothes looked old-fashioned wool coat, long skirt, gloves. She paid cash, exact change, and sat halfway down near the middle. Didn't look at me once. The interior lights buzzed and dimmed when she passed under them. Static flared on the radio, then died. I checked the mirror. She was staring out the window, her reflection sharp in the glass. I couldn't see her face clearly, just her mouth, moving like she was whispering something. 10 minutes later, I stopped again. 2 men, this time factory uniforms, both soaked from rain that wasn't falling outside. They weren't on the list either. They said nothing, just sat down behind the woman. I told myself the manifest might be outdated. Dispatch was sloppy like that, but when I glanced at the monitor feed, the one that showed the passenger cabinet glitched. The image froze for a second, then skipped forward. In the frozen frame, there weren't 3 people. There were 7. I blinked hard, looked back into the mirror. Only 3. By the time we hit the halfway point, the bus was half full. Men in work clothes, a kid holding a teddy bear, a woman in a nurse's uniform from at least 50 years ago. None of them talked. None of them looked at each other, and the heater was blasting full force, even though the control was off. At 11:59, the road curved toward the old overpass. A "Do Not Enter, Bridge Closed" sign flashed past. The GPS said to take the detour, but the bus slowed on its own. The brakes sighed like something heavy had pressed down. The headlights caught the overpass rotted guardrails, gaps where the concrete had collapsed long ago. But across it, faint in the distance, I saw streetlights, a town that shouldn't have been there. Then the woman in the wool coat stood up. "Driver," she said softly, "you missed our stop." Her reflection in the windshield smiled, even though her mouth didn't. The others stood too. One by one, their movements jerky, synchronized. The kid's teddy bear dropped to the floor with a wet thud. It's heavier than it should have been. "Sit down," I said, voice shaking. "We're not stopping." They didn't listen. The woman leaned closer. "We ride every year. You just don't remember." The bus rolled forward on its own, wheels crunching over broken asphalt toward the bridge. The GPS flickered red. No route found. The last thing I saw before the lights went out was the reflection of every passenger turning toward me at once, mouths open in the same silent scream. When the lights came back, I was alone, but every seat behind me was soaked with rainwater, and the fare box was filled with old coins dated 1954. I sat there, for a full minute. Engine idling, trying to convince myself it was some kind of prank. The seats behind me dripped steadily, water pooling in the aisle, cold enough to fog the windshield. I turned in my seat. Every window was streaked with condensation, though I hadn't felt a drop of rain outside. I should have driven back. I should have called dispatch. But curiosity is poison for drivers like me. So I shifted into drive and rolled forward. The bridge was worse than I remembered, half collapsed. The guardrails gone, the road surface uneven and cracked. The air on the other side shimmered with faint orange light, like sodium street lamps from a town that didn't exist anymore. Halfway across, the bus lights flickered and died. The engine sputtered, then caught again with a deep metallic groan. The radio crackled to life's white noise first, then a woman's voice. "Bus 302, you're late." I froze. It wasn't dispatch. The voice was too calm, too close, like someone whispering directly into my ear. "Who is this?" No answer. Only a faint, static heartbeat. The headlights came back, and that's when I saw the sign ahead. Rusted metal. K. Letters barely legible through grime. "Welcome to Ashfield, population." The rest was burned out. Ashfield hadn't existed for decades. A landslide buried the whole town in '54. I pulled over at what used to be a leaning pole. The number plate still hanging from it. The same number painted on my bus, 302. Then the door hissed open by itself. Cold air flooded in, smelling of rust and wet leaves. Outside, the road looked freshly paved, slick from invisible rain. I saw movement in the fog, figures waiting near the ditch. Dozens of them. They began to board, one by one. Each carried exact fare. Each dropped old coins into the boxes over dimes, wheat pennies, tokens I hadn't seen since my grandfather's time. None looked at me. Some were missing shoes. Some were missing faces. The seats filled fast, and yet no one made a sound. When the last one entered, the door shut automatically. The air turned colder still. My breath fogged in the cab. The radio clicked again. "End of the line," the voice whispered. "Take them home." The bus moved without me touching the wheel. It rolled through the fog, engine rumbling like a heartbeat. The passengers swayed together in unison, heads tilted toward the windows, as if watching something I couldn't see through the windshield. Faint orange light glowed against street lamps, appearing one after another, revealing a main street frozen in time. Storefronts, telephone poles, cars parked perfectly along the curb, all covered in ash, not dust. Ash dot. The figures on the bus began to hum a low, broken sound like wind through a tunnel. Their reflections in the glass were smiling. I hit the brakes, but the bus didn't slow. The road bent downward into what looked like a tunnel, but there shouldn't have been one. The further we went, the brighter the lights grew until they burned pure white. Then everything stopped. The hum cut off. The passengers were gone. The bus was empty again, parked in the middle of an open highway. Nothing but desert on both sides. The clock above the dash read 3:13 a.m. I thought it was over. Then I saw something in the rearview mirror shape sitting in the very last row. Just one. The woman from before, in the wool coat, staring straight ahead. I turned to face her. She wasn't there. The radio buzzed again, faint but clear. 302, you brought them back. Thank you. The voice wasn't relief. It was hunger. Static swallowed the signal. Then the bus engine died for good. Headlights appeared behind me, a convoy of identical buses stretching into the darkness, each with the same number, 302. They passed, one by one. Driver seats all empty. When the last bus rolled by, I saw my own face behind its wheel, grinning, eyes glowing orange like twin brake lights. The other buses faded into the fog until only the hum of their engines remained, low and rhythmic like chanting. I sat in the dark cab of mine, breathing hard, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen my own face driving past. But the steering wheel was warm under my hands, as warm as if someone else had been gripping it moments before. The dashboard lights flickered back on, one by one. The digital clock reset itself to 11:59 p.m. I'd been driving for hours, but somehow time had looped backward. "Dispatch," I said into the radio, my voice shaking. "Bus 302, requesting confirmation." I think my systems glitched. Static. Then a faint laugh, low, wet, drawn out. "You're not supposed to call anymore," a voice answered. It was me again. I threw the radio aside. The GPS display lit up by itself. The route line that should have led back toward the depot now pointed straight into empty desert. The words "Final stop, Ashfield Terminal" blinked at the top. Something deep in the bus clicked. The door unlocked outside. The air was thick with fog. I could see faint lights ahead, scattered like dying embers. The road was cracked, pieces of concrete jutting upward, but the bus started rolling forward again without my touch. The farther we went, the more the landscape changed. The desert gave way to half-buried telephone poles, twisted fences, and rusted-out cars, half submerged in the sand. And then buildings. Dozens of them. ASHFIELD. The entire town was there, frozen in mid-collapse, draped in gray dust. Every window glowed faint orange from within, like candles burning behind the glass. The bus slowed as it reached the center square, stopping in front of what looked like a collapsed bus depot. A cracked sign read, 302 Terminal. I didn't want to open the doors, but they hissed apart on their own. The air that entered smelled like old rain and burnt oil. Then came the footsteps. Soft, uneven, from every direction. Shapes emerging from the fogmen. Women, children, their skin dust gray, their eyes empty sockets leaking faint light. They boarded quietly, one after another, coins clinking into the fare box. The sound was heavy, metallic, endless. I tried to stand. Couldn't. My body refused to move. My reflection in the windshield wasn't matching my motions anymore. It smiled while I didn't. When the last passenger sat, the woman in the wool coat appeared again, standing at the front of the aisle. "Drive," she said. "I can't," I whispered. She tilted her head. "You can now." The wheel began to turn under my hands. The engine roared to life, and the bus lurched forward. The fog thickened until it swallowed everything. We drove for what felt like hours, maybe days. The passengers never spoke, never moved. Their faces flickered in and out of view through the rearview mirror, sometimes solid, sometimes transparent. At one point, I realized there were more rows of seats than before. The bus had grown longer, stretching backward into infinity, then through the fog. I saw it the overpass again, broken, waiting. The woman turned toward me. "You have to finish the route." I gripped the wheel tighter. "If I drive across, we'll crash." Her voice softened. "Not if you keep them inside." I didn't know what she meant until I glanced back. Every passenger was staring at me now, faces melting into something skeletal. Their mouths opened, and instead of screams, I heard one word whispered over and over: "Home." The bus picked up speed. The guardrails vanished under the wheels. I closed my eyes as the front end tilted downward into nothing. Then dashed silence. When I opened my eyes, dawn was breaking. The bus was parked neatly in the depot lot, paint fresh, windshield spotless. The seats behind me were empty except for one thing: clipboard resting on the last row. A new manifest. Every name was the same. Driver, Route 302. I looked at the mirror. The reflection smiled back at me, though I wasn't smiling. Its eyes burned faint orange, twin headlights in the dark. A voice came over the radio, calm and tired. 302, you're cleared for departure. You made it through. You did good. I exhaled. Who's this? Dispatch, it said. It's your turn now. The engine rumbled beneath me. I felt the bus breathing again. The sun outside looked pale, sickly. Maybe I died on that bridge. Maybe I didn't. But when the headlights came on, I didn't stop them, because the road behind me wasn't there anymore. Only the next route ahead. They say bus 302 doesn't run anymore, but I keep driving it every Halloween. And at least now, when they come aboard, I'm the one who decides who stays. You don't realize how alive a cornfield sounds until you're standing in one alone. The stalks whisper when the wind moves, brushing together like dry paper, a sound too close to breathing. I'd worked 3 Octobers at the Boone family harvest maze outside Des Moines, but last Halloween was my last shift. I told everyone I quit because of the pay. The truth is, still hear that field when I try to sleep. I was the closer that night meeting. I stayed after the last group went in to make sure nobody got lost. The maze closed at 11, and most families were gone by 10:30. We'd had a steady crowd all night, parents, teenagers, few drunks, but around 10:45, a group of 5 came through. They didn't say much. No costumes, no laughter, just flashlights swinging in unison like they practiced it. One of the other workers, Kyle, nudged me as they passed. Locals from up north, he whispered. Creepy as hell. They didn't buy tickets. I shrugged it off. We let people wander in sometimes, especially after dark. But something about them bothered me. The way they walked close together, almost shoulder to shoulder. The way the air seemed to go still when they passed the entrance. The last group before Dem and Dad. 2 kids came out 15 minutes later, red-faced and laughing, leaves in their hair. I asked if they'd seen the 5. They hadn't. By 11:15, the field was supposed to be empty. I radioed Kyle to confirm the exits were clear. No response. The wind picked up, bending the stalks sideways, whispering louder. I took my flashlight and headed in. The maze paths twist and double back in long arcs. You can see maybe 10 feet ahead before the corn swallows you again. The air smelled like dirt and mold, the way it does when the harvest's nearly done. I've passed the first few checkpoints, empty scarecrow stations with motion lights still blinking. The speakers that normally played sound effects were dead silent. Halfway in, I found a flashlight lying in the dirt, beam aimed straight down like someone dropped it mid-step. I picked it up. It was still warm. Kyle, I called out. My voice barely carried. The corn absorbed sound, muffling it until I could almost hear myself breathing from 10 directions at once. Something rustled a few rows over. Footsteps. Slow, measured. Maze is closed, I said. If you're lost, call out. Silence stopped, then a whisper, clear as if someone leaned over my shoulder. Not lost. Spun around, lights slicing through the stalks. Nothing there, just the rows, perfectly still. I told myself it was wind, echo, or maybe Kyle screwing around. But the next sound wasn't wind. Laughter. Soft, too close. The light in my hand flickered, dimmed. I clicked it off and on again. When it came back, the rows around me looked wrong, taller, tighter, the dirt darker. I walked faster, checking my phone for a GPS signal. Nothing. I hit the central clearing, the biggest open space in the maze, where we set up a scare zone with fake skeletons. The props were still there, but something was off. The skeletons had been rearranged into a circle, all facing inward. Their plastic arms interlocked. In the middle of them sat a corn-husk doll, tied together with red twine. I crouched closer. The twine wasn't red. It was wet. Kyle, I said again, voice shaking. Cut it out, man. No answer. Then I noticed the footprints, 5 sets, leading into the circle, but none leading out. The stalks rustled again. Dozens of them this time, from every direction. My flashlight swung wildly, catching glimpses of movement shapes between the rows, low and fast. Then, above the noise, I heard it clearly, whispering, hundreds of voices. Not loud, just constant, overlapping, rising and falling with the wind. Words I couldn't make out, but the rhythm was familiar like chanting. I turned and ran. The path didn't look the same anymore. It curved where it shouldn't, led into walls of corn that hadn't been there minutes ago. The whispers grew louder. I could hear individual tones, now male, female, children, each one saying my name. When I burst through the exit finally, gasping, the world outside was dead quiet. No wind, no crickets, just my own breath. The corn behind me swayed once, like something big had moved beneath it, and then went still. Kyle's radio crackled on my belt. A voice came through. Not Kyle's, it whispered. The last group hasn't come out yet. When I turned back toward the maze, there were 5 new flashlights moving inside. One of them was mine. I should have left. Should have locked the gate, called the cops, and let someone else deal with it. But those flashlights, 5 of them drifting between the roads, looked too deliberate. They weren't bouncing like normal people walking. They were gliding, steady beams slicing through the corn in perfect rhythm. And one was mine. Same cracked lens, same faint flicker when it hit movement. "Kyle," I said into the radio, forcing calm into my voice. "If you're messing with me, I swear," static answered. Then, faintly, a voice. "I told you." Not lost. It's the same whisper as before. My legs felt like lead, but I stepped through the entrance again. The maze swallowed me whole. The air was thicker this time, the smell of rot sharper. Each step crunched louder than it should have, like the dirt had been replaced with something brittle. The flashlight beams ahead vanished one by one until only one remained, flickering near the central clearing. I followed it. The rows felt tighter now, the stalks brushing my shoulders like fingers. I heard movement all around, small, quick rustles, as if dozens of people were crouched just out of sight, crawling parallel to me. Then something darted across the path, a blur, low to the ground. I froze. It wasn't human. The light caught the shape for just a second. A bundle of stalks tied together, scuttling on what looked like hands. My breath caught in my throat. The corn hissed around me again, whispering words that slipped just out of comprehension. I pressed forward. The central clearing was ahead, and I could hear something low hum like a generator. But the maze didn't have power. When I stepped into the clearing, the skeleton props were gone. In their place stood the 5 people from earlier, forming a circle around the same corn husk doll. The doll was burning now, red flame that didn't throw light, just heat. They were whispering in unison, a language that felt wrong in my mouth, just hearing it. I raised my light. The beams didn't touch them. It just bent around their faces, leaving their eyes in shadow. "Hey," I shouted. "You're trespassing." They didn't react. I took one step closer, then another. The air grew heavier. My ears rang like a pressure shift before a storm. The voices stopped. Then, as one, they turned toward me. Their faces were blank, not emotionless blank. Smooth skin where eyes and mouths should have been. I stumbled back, tripped over something hard. My flashlight landed in the dirt, rolling to a stop beside a boot. Kyle's boot. His leg was still in it. I gagged, scrambled to my feet, and ran. The stalks bent against me, the rows shifting again. Every path looked identical, stretching forever. My light caught glimpses of faces between the leaves, more of them now, some familiar, some not. Workers, guests, kids who'd gone missing over the years. Their mouths didn't move, but I heard them whispering inside my head. "Stay, stay." The light ahead appeared again, the last flashlight, the one I thought was mine. It was lying in the dirt, pointed straight up at the sky. I picked it up and saw it wasn't mine after all. It was older, none older model, caked in mud. Scratched into the handle was a date, October 31st, 1996. That's when I realized the corn rows had stopped moving. Everything was still. The wind had died. The air felt thick and wet, every breath shallow. Something rustled behind me. I turned slowly, and the 5 people were gone. Only the doll remained, half burned, the twine still smoking. I stepped closer, despite myself. Its tiny head tilted. I swear, it looked right at me. Then a new sound, a soft whimper, maybe a child's, echoing from somewhere deeper in the field. Against all sense, I followed it. The rows opened into another clearing I'd never seen before. A small wooden structure stood in the center, half collapsed, covered in vines. A shed, maybe. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was damp and cold. Corn husks hung from the ceiling like wind chimes, and on the far wall, written in what looked like mud door blood, were the words, "They listen when you walk." I turned to leave, but the whisper came again, right next to my ear. This time, "You're almost home." When I stepped back outside, my own footprints in the dirt were gone, and every flashlight in the maze turned on at once, all of them pointing directly at me. For a second, I couldn't move. Dozens of flashlights burned through the corn, beams cutting from every direction. Some were bright white, some yellowed with age, some so dim they looked more like candlelight than LED. None of them flickered. They all pointed straight at me, steady and silent. The maze was alive with light, but dead quiet otherwise. No wind, no insects, no breathing, just a faint hiss of electricity that shouldn't exist out there. My chest hurt from how hard my heart was pounding. I took one step forward, and all the lights moved in unison, tilting to follow me. I spun, searching for anyone. Kyle, the 5 strangers. Anybody? Nothing. Just the sound of dry corn brushing together like sandpaper. "Who's there?" I shouted. "You need to stop this, right now." A whisper answered, surrounding me on every side. Not one voice, hundreds. They all said the same word at once, over and over, until it blurred into rhythm. "Walk." The rows in front of me opened like a door. Against every instinct, I followed. The flashlights shifted too, forming a path, always staying exactly 20 feet away. The deeper I went, the hotter the air got, like the whole field was breathing. The ground underfoot softened, turning from dirt to mud to something almost fleshy. The smell changed too sweet, like rotting fruit and iron. I reached another clearing, smaller this time. The burned husk doll was there again, sitting upright on a mound of corn cobs, arranged like a throne. The 5 people stood behind it, motionless. They didn't have faces anymore, just smooth skin pulled tight where features should have been. The doll twitched. I froze as its head turned toward me. The voice that came out was high and brittle, like dry stalks snapping. "You shouldn't have come back after last year." My throat went dry. "What are you talking about? You walked, then, too?" it whispered. "You let them in?" I took a step back. "No. This is my first time here. I just work here." It tilted its head. "You always say that." The ground shifted beneath my boots, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The flashlight beams swung down, converging on the mound of corn. I saw what it really was, not cobs, but bones. Hundreds of them. Some still wearing bracelets, shoelaces, bits of Halloween costume fabric. The air trembled, vibrating with thousands of whispers, overlapping into one endless hiss. My skin crawled as I realized it wasn't the wind at all, it was the field. Every stalk was moving, bending toward me, whispering in 1,000 tiny mouths. The faceless people stepped aside, making room for me. The doll's head turned full circle, cracking. "Someone must stay to listen," it said. I bolted. The flashlights turned off in a wave, one after another, plunging the maze into darkness. I ran blind, crashing through rows, tearing my clothes, not caring which direction. I just needed out. But the maze didn't end. It twisted, folded, paths repeating themselves until I swore I was running in circles. I passed the same fallen scarecrow twice. then 3 times. The same broken flashlight from before, and then I was back in the clearing again. The mound was gone, but the doll wasn't. It lay in the dirt, half buried, hand reaching out like it had crawled there itself. "Kyle," I whispered, because saying my own name didn't feel right anymore. "Please tell me this isn't real." The radio on my belt crackled to life, the same static as before. A voice spoke through it, calm and quiet. "You can go now," it said. I didn't wait to argue. I ran until the stalks gave way to open air. I stumbled out of the maze and fell onto the gravel by the gate. My phone said 4:17 a.m. The field behind me was still, lit only by the faintest hint of dawn. I called the police. They searched all morning. They found no flashlights, no footprints, no bones. The maze looked brand new, rows perfect, untouched. Kyle was gone. They told me it was exhaustion, dehydration, stress, maybe stroke. I told myself they were writing till last week. I drove past Boone Family Farm on my way to work. The maze is closed now, abandoned. But through the fence, I saw something move between the rows. A single flashlight beam gliding steady and smooth when I stopped the truck. The radio crackled. "You shouldn't have come back," the whisper said. I turned it off, but when I got home, the passenger seat was covered in corn husks, damp with morning dew, every night since. I've heard the corn whisper outside my window, and when the wind hits just right, it calls my name. I've been hosting Midnight Signal on 103.3 FM for almost 9 years now. Small town radio lonely highways, truckers half asleep, kids sneaking out with earbuds, the kind of station you only find between frequencies, a voice floating in static. Halloween's always my busiest night. I do a call-in, special ghost stories, urban legends, weird sounds from the road. People eat that stuff up. But last Halloween wasn't like any of the others. It was the night I picked up a call that wasn't on the switchboard. It started normal enough. 11:30 p.m. I was halfway through a segment called Dead Air Confessions. My only company was the glow of the soundboard and the hum of old equipment. "Line 3, I said, hitting the fader. "You're live on Midnight Signal. Tell us your story." Nothing. Just a hiss of white noise. "Line 3, can you hear me?" Pause. Then, faintly, "Turn it down." The voice was male, slow, gravelly. I adjusted the input. "You mean the volume?" "Not the volume," he said. "The light." I glanced around the booth. Only one light was on the old red on-air sign above the door. "What light?" Silence again. Then a soft chuckle. "You don't see it yet." I frowned. "Sir, are you calling about the show? If not, I'll have to move on." He whispered something, too quiet to catch. I leaned closer to the monitor. The soundboard meters jumped, even though he wasn't speaking. Then the hum started. It was low at first, like sub-bass feedback, but deeper, almost physical. It rattled the desk under my hands. The monitors flickered. The audio feed stuttered. I killed the mic. The hum didn't stop. Every frequency band on the console was active at once, like every signal from every station was bleeding through. The tower outside the building flashed brighter, its red light strobing against the glass. Then the phone lines all lit up at once. Every line. Even the ones we disabled years ago. The first one I answered was dead air. The second, the same. But the third, "Don't hang up." Same voice. "Who is this?" I asked. "You don't remember me." Scanned the caller ID displayed like. Not even unknown, just empty space. The hum deepened again, shaking the walls. I could hear something inside it. No voices. Dozens. Overlapping. Whispering my name. The red on-air light flickered. For a second, it wasn't red at all. It was blue. Cold blue, like arc light or lightning. "Where are you broadcasting from?" I asked. A pause. Then, not where, when. My throat tightened. I muted the mic, switched to a recorded segment, and stepped into the hallway. The tower outside pulsed faster now, each flash in perfect sync with that impossible hum. When I went back inside, the phone lines were dark again. Everything silent. Even the recording had cut out mid-song. The digital clock on the console read 3:13 a.m. That was impossible. I'd looked at it only seconds before. It was 11:42. Then the printer by the wall whirred to life. It hadn't worked in years, but now it was spitting out reams of paper. I picked one up. It was a log of Costonite's timestamp. It's 3:13 a.m. 5 calls in total lines. 1 through 4 listed no number, no duration. Line 5 read, caller ID, no name, self-duration, ongoing. I froze. The receiver on the board clicked back on. The voice returned, calm and quiet. You left the light on again. Okay. The blue glow returned, stronger this time, filling the booth like underwater light. I couldn't see my reflection in the window anymore, just static. Who are you? I asked. I'm what comes after the dead air. The soundboard spiked, every channel peaking. The speakers screamed with layered voices, all speaking at once. Then silence. The tower light outside went dark when the emergency power kicked back in. The console clock reset to 11:30 and the recording of that last call was already queued to play. Even though I hadn't hit record, I played back the recording 5 times before admitting it wasn't a recording. Every time I hit stop, the voice kept talking. It changed subtly with each playback, as if it were reacting to me. The timestamp never moved past 3:13. It was stuck in endless loop of one impossible minute. Turn it down, it whispered again, faint beneath the static. I killed the power to the entire console. The audio still bled through the speakers. No equipment in that booth was capable of playing anything without current. That's when I realized the hum hadn't stopped. It was quieter now, but still they're vibrating through the floor, through my ribs, like a heartbeat I couldn't separate from my own. I walked out into the hall, flashlight in hand. The building was empty, of course. Just me, the tower humming outside, and the smell of ozone from the old wiring. But when I passed Studio B, I stopped cold. The red on-air light was glowing. That room hadn't been used in years. It was our backup studio, gutted after the fire. The door was sealed with a rusted chain and padlock. The glass window cracked down the middle. Yet from inside, I could hear faint voices, half a dozen people talking over each other, murmuring, laughing softly. Ray, I called out, half hoping my producer had decided to drop in. The voices stopped. Then, slowly, the light above the door flickered from red to blue. The hum in my chest deepened. Something about the blue bothered me. It wasn't natural. It didn't cast shadows, it erased them. The moment it hit my face through the window, I felt like I was being watched by something behind my own reflection. Then the intercom came alive. Studio A. The same voice from before said, "You left your channel open, stepped back. Who is this?" "Still me," it replied. "Still you." That sound, again like static breathing. The intercom crackled. "Come inside. I'll show you the frequency." I looked down. The padlock was open now, chain hanging loose. The air around the door was warmer, charged. I pushed it open. The room inside was dark except for one monitor, ancient and half melted from the fire. It displayed a frozen waveform oscillating patterns, looping infinitely. I recognized the frequency immediately. 103.3 MGs, my station. The waveform shifted. It wasn't random anymore. The lines were forming shapes, letters, key L, T, psi G, psi G, N. I stepped back. The monitor buzzed, and from the corner speaker came faint breathing. Then voices again. Dozens this time, but one stood out, my own. "I told you to turn it down," it said. I grabbed the nearest chair and smashed the monitor. The screen burst, sparks showering the floor. The sound stopped for half a second. Then, through the shards, the waveform kept playing, reflected in the broken glass like a heartbeat. The intercom clicked again. "Don't fight the bleed." I turned toward the hall. The blue light was spilling outward now, crawling along the walls, turning the air thick and humming. The old posters on the walls, classic rock, country shows, all our filler programs, rippled as if vibrating. I could see faint faces forming in them, mouths open in perfect sync. I ran back into Studio A and slammed the door. The clock above the console still read 03:13. The printer was spitting paper again. Thousands of copies of the same line. "Call in, call in, call in." The phones rang, all 6 lines. I didn't answer. Then my personal cell phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost threw it away, but something in me needed to know. I picked up that static. Then a whisper, identical to mine. "You left the mic live." I looked up. The on-air light was blue again. I hadn't turned it on. The hum rose higher, filling every frequency my ears could process. I felt the fillings in my teeth buzz, the walls shaking like the whole building was breathing. Then, faintly, the voice said, "They can hear you now." The board lights flickered. Every switch flipped to live broadcast. The red phone line blinked a number displayed this time, 103.3 megahertz. I realized what that meant. The station itself was calling when I answered. The voice on the other end wasn't speaking. It was laughing, perfectly in sync with the hum vibrating through the tower outside. When I picked up that final call, everything inside the booth went silent. No hum, no static, no sound at all's just a vacuum, like someone had pressed mute on the world. Then, faintly, I heard breathing through the receiver. My own breathing. I didn't speak. Neither did it. But I felt words forming in my mouth that weren't mine. They came out perfectly in sync with what I was hearing. "We're on the air." The red on-air light flared back to life. Every meter on the board maxed out. I should have been deafened, but there was no sound. Just the illusion of it, pressure filling my head, my teeth, my chest. Then the feed began transmitting again. My monitor showed an active signal, spike 103.3 FM, live, but the frequency was fluctuating, phasing in and out of ranges that shouldn't exist. Above the normal spectrum, the phone receiver hissed, then whispered, "Say something." I swallowed hard. To who? To them. Looked at the mic. Its indicator light blinked steadily, waiting. I don't know why I did it. Maybe instinct. Maybe compulsion. I leaned forward. "Good evening, listeners," I said. My voice came out lower, wrong, layered with static undertones. "You're tuned to the midnight hour." Signal crackled back at me like applause. The monitor shifted to show a feed of real-time listener locations. Normally, there'd be a handful, truckers, insomniacs, a few late-night weirdos. But now, thousands of pings appeared across the map. Then, tens of thousands, each one blinked in rhythm with the tower light outside. "See?" the voice said. They never stopped listening. My throat tightened. "Who are you?" "You." The voice warped, distorting into dozens, hundreds, all speaking over each other in my voice, in different tones, different decades, male, female, static between every syllable. "You started the loop," they said. "You left the mic on. We only filled the silence." I yanked the mic cable out. The sound continued. I pulled the main breaker. The tower outside dimmed, but the hum grew louder. The walls trembled, dust raining from the ceiling. My console monitor flashed new data. Recording archived file name, 1033_1954_hum. The same year the station was founded. The same year our old broadcast tower collapsed during a storm, killing the original night host. I'd read about it once. They said he'd been alone in the booth when the signal shorted out. But the strangest part of the report was what they found on the transmission logs. After his death, the station kept broadcasting for exactly 13 minutes. 3:13. The phone receiver crackled again. He didn't turn it down either, the voice said. Then every speaker in the booth came alive at once, howling feedback mixed with laughter. The glass window in front of me fogged up from the heat. Words began to appear in the condensation letters drawn from the inside. Keep broadcasting. The board lit up red again. Somehow, the entire system had rebooted itself. A digital text scrolled across the screen. Live feed signal, stable, audience, continuous. The hum wasn't just in my ears anymore, it was in my head, vibrating behind my eyes. I stumbled out into the hallway, covering my ears, but the sound followed. It was in the walls, in the floor, in my own heartbeat. I passed Studio B again. The door was wide open this time, blue lights spilling out in waves. Inside, I could see the silhouette of a man sitting at the microphone. He turned, slowly. It was me. He smiled, leaned into the mic, and whispered, "We're still live." The light burst, flooding everything white. When I woke up, it was daylight. The booth looked untouched. No blue glow, no hum, just normal silence. I checked the recordings, empty. The call logs blank. Even the tower's relay data had been wiped. It was as if the whole night never happened. But when I powered on the console, the waveform from that burned-out monitor appeared on screen again, pulsing faintly at the edge of the spectrum. Then the printer started. One page slid out. One sentence: "The signal never dies. I still host Midnight Signal every night. Everything's normal now, except for one thing. Sometimes, when I'm wrapping up around 3, I hear faint static under my own voice, and when I glance at the monitor, the timestamp always freezes at 3:13. If you ever scan between stations and hear someone whispering your name through static, don't answer. It's not me. It's the part of me that never turned the light off." Most highways are quiet after midnight. The kind of quiet you start to hear, like pressure in your ears. That's why I liked night hauls, less traffic, fewer idiots, just me and the hum of the rig. But every driver on Route 55 knows the same rule. Don't stop at the hollow rest stop after 2A.M. It's not on any current map, but it's still there, half lit between mile 1087 and 1088. Sometimes it appears closer, sometimes farther, and when it shows up, it looks new again. Even though it was condemned 20 years ago, I'd always thought it was trucker folklore. Until Halloween night last year, the weather had turned fast, thick fog. No moon, rain, just enough to blur the windshield. Dispatch wanted me to push through to Kansas City, but fatigue was catching up hard. When I saw the sign Hall rest stop, food, gas, lodging, I figured a cup of coffee wouldn't kill me. The parking lot was empty. Not quiet though. I could hear the hum of lights before I even opened the door. Every bulb flickered a little too slow, like the power was running on delay. Inside, the place looked frozen in time. Tiles spotless. Vending machines stocked with old brands I hadn't seen since the 90s, Pepsi in glass bottles. Candy bars with retro wrappers. The air smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. There was a woman by the ice machine. She wore a faded diner uniform and smiled when she saw me. "Long night, hun?" she asked. Her voice was warm, tired, real. I nodded. "Yeah, fog's brutal out there. Always is," she said, turning back to scoop ice into a styrofoam cup. "You should rest a bit before driving again. Coffee's still fresh." She pointed to the counter, where an old bun pot steamed faintly. I poured a cup. It smelled right, tasted wrong, metallic, like pennies. "Appreciate it," I said, setting a few bills on the counter. She smiled again. "You can't buy what's free." I chuckled awkwardly. "Sure, guess I'll stretch my legs." The restrooms were down a short hall, but the lights there flickered nonstop. I caught my reflection in the mirror over the sinks, something about it off. The angle? Maybe. It was still washing its hands when I had already stopped. That's when I noticed the noise. Not the flickering lights or the dripping faucets, something underneath. A low, steady tone, almost below hearing. Like a subwoofer hum, you feel more than hear. I turned off the faucet. The sound stayed. When I stepped back into the main room, the woman was gone. The cup she'd been holding sat on the counter, still half full of ice. But the cubes weren't melting. They were perfect. It's clear, motionless. Dot outside. Fog pressed against the glass, so thick, it looked solid. My truck was just a faint shadow in it. I reached for my phone to check the time. 7:07 a.m. That wasn't right. I'd only been there 10 minutes. The hum grew louder. The lights dimmed until only the neon open sign glowed through the haze, red and pulsing. I turned toward the door. That's when I saw her again outside, standing next to my truck, hand resting on the door handle. She wasn't moving, just staring through the glass, smiling. Her face was too pale now, almost luminescent in the fog. "Ma'am?" I called through the door, her head tilted. The smile didn't change, but something behind it did. Like her skin wasn't stretched over her face, but something else, wearing one. Then she raised her hand, "Ken," and I saw it wasn't a hand at all. It was smooth, wet, no fingers. The shape pressed flat against the glass, leaving a perfect handprint that shimmered faint blue before fading. I backed up. The humming filled the air again, vibrating through the floor. The vending machines buzzed, their digital screens glitching into white static. The fog outside thickened until it looked like liquid. The lights went out when they came back. The woman was gone, but the automatic door was open, and a trail of wet footprints led inside, straight toward me. The footprint stopped right in front of me, and then another drop hit the floor. But this time, it didn't fall from her. It fell from the ceiling. The drop hit the tile beside my boot, thick, dark, and slow. It wasn't water. The smell hit a second later, airing, wet earth, and something electrical, like ozone after lightning. My hand went to the box cutter in my jacket pocket. I flicked the flashlight on my phone. The ceiling tiles above me bulged, wet patches spreading in concentric circles. Something was moving up there, slow, deliberate. I stepped back toward the door, but it slid shut before I reached it, stealing me in with a hydraulic hiss. The vending machines flickered to life again. Their screens showed no products now, just words scrolling too fast to read. Then they stopped. 3 words remained: "Do not leave." The humming deepened. Every bulb in the ceiling glowed red for 1 second, then white, then out. I aimed my light toward the footprints. They were gone. Not dried up gone, like the floor had absorbed them, but something else had appeared instead then. Hairline cracks spidering outward from where each footprint had been. The air pressure changed. My ears popped. It felt like being underwater. Then the woman spoke again, but her voice didn't come from anywhere I could point to. It vibrated through the walls, low and rhythmic. "You should have kept driving." Heart pounded hard enough I could feel it in my palms. I forced myself to the door and tried the panel again. The handle didn't even budge. "Listen," I said, voice shaking. "I don't know what this place is, but I'm leaving." The ceiling split open above the counter. It wasn't an explosion, more like the plaster peeled itself apart. A single object dropped from the gap, landing with a hollow clack. It rolled across the floor until it hit my boot. A key metal tag attached. Room 7. The motel section of the rest stop. I looked toward the hallway by the restrooms. A door stood open at the end, glowing faint yellow. I should have stayed put, but that hum god, it wouldn't stop. It drilled into my skull, rising and falling like a heartbeat. I grabbed the key and stepped through the hall. The farther I went, the older the place looked. Paint bubbled on the walls, carpet squishing under my boots like wet sponge. Each step echoed twice, once real, once delayed. Room 7's door was half open. I pushed it the rest of the way. The inside looked lived in. Bed made, TV on static, a half-empty coffee cup steaming on the table. But the air was cold enough to frost my breath. The wallpaper pulsed faintly with the same rhythm as the hum. I turned toward the bed. The woman was sitting there, facing away, her hair damp and matted. "Who are you?" I whispered. She didn't answer. Her hand lifted slowly, pointing at the TV. The screen shifted from static to a live feed my truck, parked outside. The headlights were on now, engine running, but there was someone sitting in the cab. It was me. The version of me on screen turned, stared straight into the camera, and smiled. Then the real truck horn blared outside, shaking the walls. I dropped the phone. The woman turned around. Her face wasn't human anymore, skin stretched thin like wax paper, eyes gone black and wide. Her mouth opened impossibly far, and the hum poured out of her like a siren. I stumbled back into the hall, slamming into the wall. The wallpaper tore away in long strips, revealing hundreds of Polaroids underneath truckers. Families, kids, every face hollow-eyed, mouths mid-scream. The lights exploded overhead. The hum turned into a roar. I bolted toward the entrance, but the hallway stretched, lengthening with every step. The doors on both sides slammed open and shut in perfect rhythm, the sound sinking to my heartbeat. Finally, I hit the front door. It opened into the fog again. I sprinted to the truck, jumped inside, locked the doors, and floored it. The tires screamed against the wet pavement. The rest stop disappeared behind me, or so I thought. The GPS on my dash blinked. Route 55, mile 187. A few minutes later, the same sign appeared on the shoulder. Hollow, rest stop, food, gas, lodging. The fog thickened. The lights of the building flickered in the distance. I hadn't gone anywhere. The CB radio crackled. "K," and my own voice came through, calm and steady. "You can't leave once you've checked in. Not until they fill your seat." The CB kept hissing. Long after my voice stopped, static filled the cab, a wet, whispering kind that crawled under your skin. I switched it off. The hum didn't fade, it was coming from the road itself, vibrating through the steering wheel. The highway stretched ahead in a straight line of fog and broken reflectors. My headlights caught the same sign again, mile 187, then another, mile 187. No matter how far I drove, I wasn't leaving that mile. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12, I said into the mic. "GPS is looping. Do you copy?" The speaker crackled. A woman answered, voice distorted. "Copy, Unit 12. Confirm current stop. Still passing mile 187. But," she interrupted, "pull in for inspection. Your log shows you never checked out." The fog outside pulsed like breath. In the distance, lights bloomed, too bright, too familiar. The rest stop again, standing proud and clean, just as it had the first time. The same neon open sign blinked slow and steady. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop in the middle of the lane. "No," I muttered. "Not again." 'Cause the engine died on its own. Every gauge dropped to 0. My headlights dimmed. I could still see the building through the windshield, perfectly clear despite the fog, as if it were closer than it looked. The CB clicked back on. My own voice again. "You should have kept driving." The driver's side door unlocked by itself. The interior lights came on, bathing the cab in that same dull red glow. I grabbed the ignition kit, snapped clean in half between my fingers. The fog outside shifted, revealing movement near the pumps. Shadows walking. 5, maybe 6 figures. They moved slow, mechanical, all facing the truck. One of them raised a hand and waved. I don't remember opening the door. One blink and I was outside, boots sinking into wet asphalt. The hum was stronger now, a deep pulse under the ground. "Hello?" I shouted. "Who's there?" The nearest figure stepped forward. It was a trucker, sort of. His clothes were soaked, skin gray, eyes hollow and glossy. A CB mic hung from his neck by the cord like a noose. "Long night," he croaked. I backed up. "Stay back." Another figure emerged behind him, the woman from before. The diner uniform clung to her like it was part of her skin. Her voice came from everywhere at once. "You checked in?" she said. "You can't drive forever, okay?" The pavement cracked beneath her feet, dark water seeping upward. The other figures began to sink into it, one by one, their reflections rippling in the black liquid. I turned and ran for the road. My truck lights flickered behind me, horn blaring on its own. The asphalt under my boots felt soft, spongy, like stepping on muscle. When I looked back, the entire rest stop was warping, buildings bending inward, lights melting into the fog. The open sign burned bright red, then inverted to blue. Pulsing in time with my heartbeat, I reached the highway and kept running, counting my steps. The hum followed, louder, closer, till it was inside my skull. Then the road ended. I don't mean it turned, I mean it ended. The asphalt just stopped, dropping into a sea of fog stretching forever. The sound below was like the rumble of an endless engine. The woman's voice echoed through the mist. "You never really leave the road." Behind me, the figures stood in a line at the edge, faces turned toward me, mouths open wide, but silent. The fog poured out of them in steady waves, filling the air with the smell of diesel and rot. I felt the pavement shift beneath my feet. Cracks opened, glowing faint red from below. The hum turned into a roar. I fell to my knees, covering my ears. "Please," I shouted. "I just want to go home." The woman stepped forward until her face was inches from mine. "You already are, okay?" The ground gave way. They found my truck 3 days later, engine running, door open. The dash cam showed 90 minutes of fog. The last frame caught my reflection in the windshield smiling, hands still on the wheel. Now, other drivers say they hear me on the CB after dark. A low voice on an empty channel saying, "Keep driving." The highway never ends after mile 187. It just folds back on itself, carrying whoever stops into the fog, and somewhere inside it, I'm still driving mile after mile, hauling nothing but the hum that swallowed me whole.